Welcome to another ClearPoint Unlock Podcast. My name's David Shepherd. I'm the General Manager of Software Engineering at ClearPoint. I've been with ClearPoint for about 18 months, and I look after a number of our software engineering teams across our mobile and web and test automation, as well as some of our back-end technologies. And included in that portfolio is I'm the GM sponsor for the Okta partnership. My own background, my experience, I spent a number of years looking after software engineering and IT operations, disaster recovery, some risk management work at Air New Zealand. Worked there for a number of years with some quite large teams into the senior leadership team. So have some experience of some real world large customer bases. And the topic of today's podcast is about customer identity. And alongside me, I've got April George from Okta, and I'll hand to you, April, to introduce yourself.
Thanks. So I'm April George. I'm a Principal Solution Engineer at Okta. I've been at Okta about 3.5 years, but I've been specialising in identity for about 17. So any identity product out there, I've probably touched it, I've probably deployed it. And so customer identity is definitely one of the passions that I've always sort of had. And so I'm happy to be here to chat to you today.
Great. So I guess to start, it'd be great to just talk about the what, the solution that a lot of customers need is customer identity. That's evolved over the years from our experience. Keen to understand sort of from your experience what you've seen around how customer identity has evolved and into the cloud.
Yeah, I think I've got a pretty unique view actually. When I started in IT, it was sort of at the boom of the internet era, which is where all of this sort of originated from, right? Everyone was used to doing their transactions face-to-face. And then as we've seen over time, there were more and more platforms that grew out of the internet age. And what we've found is users are wanting more of a face-to-face experience or a sort of more modern experience from a digital platform. And so what that's really given us the opportunity to do is use customer identity to personalize online experiences.
Right.
And we're finding companies are realizing that and trying to use that as a differentiator to help them either reach more of their target audience or identify key opportunities with the audience they already have. And identity and understanding who is interacting with your platform is really the key driver to that. And underneath that sits identity. So it's really had this sort of genesis from interactions we always had day to day. Yeah. We've just moved it into a more digital age and a more sort of human interaction.
Yeah. Okay, and Okta's customer identity cloud has obviously got cloud in its name. Yes. So I'm assuming there are some amazing benefits of having that identity solution in the cloud as opposed to on-premise or fragmented across numerous systems. Have you been across that evolution from that sort of on-premise identity solutions or fragmented into the cloud?
Yeah, absolutely. I always joke about it. 17 years ago, we were nerds in basements. Cybersecurity wasn't even a term that existed, and identity and access management was really isolated to governments and financial institutions. That was literally where I started. Yeah. As we've seen the fragmentation of identity, where really that cloud boom really accelerated that, we found that organizations could no longer contain all of their identity on their on-premise platforms. And not only that, the on-premise platforms became so big. I think there was about 3 years of my career where I think I worked changes every week, 2 a.m. through weekends and all of that. And honestly, there are just better ways to do things. Yeah. So that whole cloud adoption's really helped a lot of that. Yeah. And I mean, given your background in engineering, you would have seen many of the same changes. Yeah,
sure. I've certainly seen large organizations where I've worked where they've tried to roll their own. They know they need, they've had sort of call center or human interaction-based systems over the phone, and then they've decided to put an online presence there. They know they need to have a login, so they build that themselves. The solution evolves. You've got another system, you've got a loyalty system, or you've got a sales system, and customers, would start out with a different login for both, different profile, and then they realize that it's the same customer they're talking to, and so they've rolled their own solution here and here, and then they have this challenge of, well, how do we unite that? How do we join up the customer interaction from sales interaction with a loyalty interaction or a post-sales interaction? And that can be a real challenge when you've built it yourself, because it presents a lot of fragmentation, duplication of data, and it becomes almost its own project to try and join these things up, or then to do a big migration from that fragmented landscape into a single solution. I guess that's one of the areas that I certainly see risk mitigation come into. That's a real problem when you've got such a lot riding on that customer interaction. And now I guess with the advent of large scale cyber attacks, security's the other part of it. I would see almost the whole one of the reasons for needing a more comprehensive solution is to give you some confidence and some protection against cyber attacks, while trading off the benefits of having that single unified sort of customer identity place where all the information lives. From a security angle, where have you seen the benefits of sort of Okta's cloud solution compared to sort of rolling it your own, or maybe some of the other solutions out there?
Yeah, I think security is a great element, right? I always have this approach to defining security with people as a spectrum, right? The most secure system is one that I just don't give anyone access to.
True.
And the most user-friendly system is one that everyone has access to. So everyone needs to exist somewhere on that spectrum, depending on what it is that you're offering, right? I think the problem that we've always had is user experience and security seem to be this push and pull that never actually married up. And I think a lot of the historical ways that we've done identity, if you think about the times when you've been an engineer and having the little 6-digit code on your key ring to help log in, the MFA things, that is kind of what we think of in our heads when we think about MFA. But realistically, there are much more sophisticated ways to gain a better security outcome while still maintaining a really easy-to-use user experience, right? So newer capabilities such as passkeys, Touch ID, which we've all got on our phones, Windows Hello on Windows environments, all of these are actually providing a much higher assurance level from a security perspective, but are actually so much easier to use than the historical ways that we were deploying identity. And so I think having a platform like Okta, we're able to actually marry up both a solid user experience and very strong security and have those things both work in parallel. And that, I think, has been one of the biggest shifts in identity, especially in the customer space that I've seen in my whole career, actually.
Yeah, okay. So if a customer, and we get asked this a lot because we deal with a lot of customers in lots of different technology spaces, lots of different industries, and they'll be at different levels of maturity. They'll be at, we know we need something, but we have built this thing ourselves, or the off-the-shelf product that we have purchased has some capability, but we're not confident with it, or we've had some issues with it. We've had a breach, or we've had some data exposed, or we can't leverage a single sign-on solution. We've got a different experience for each product. And I know Okta has a great universal sort of login experience that can tie all those touch points together. How does a customer go about sort of evaluating that opportunity against where they're currently at? We get asked to help with technical advisory and then implementation of that, but sometimes it's that knowledge or the expertise to pull together a robust business case. So I'm just keen to explore a bit of your experience there working with customers to help them make that decision to move from where they are. Yeah,
I think one of the things I find is there tends to be, and this is kind of holistically, it's not just within identity, but if it works right, don't touch it. What I find, especially in the customer identity realm, is that way of thinking just doesn't work, right? What we see statistically speaking, and I know I'm not going to get these perfect, but drop-off rates for poor user experience is somewhere in the 80 percentile range. And we've all done it day to day. You go in, you try to buy something, they ask too many questions, it's too hard to get to the place where I need to input data. My credit card's on the other side of the room and they don't have Apple Pay. Those experiences stop people from purchasing. And I think organizations who really think about their revenue and the turnover and have really solid metrics to measure those things, are the first ones that identify there are better ways to do that, and they approach someone like a ClearPoint or an Okta to start understanding, well, what are other people doing in the industry, right? And we'll always have trailblazers who define newer and better ways, but it all really starts coming down to that, having an understanding of what's happening in your environment, working out, is there a problem? Is this problem worth me solving? And then what is it going to take to get there?
Yeah. Okay.
Do you find as well when people approach you and ClearPoint that they come with those metrics predefined, or are you helping them also kind of structure the thinking?
It depends really. It depends on the maturity. If they've been down a path where they've tried to do this and they've measured it and they've had some issues. When I say issues, what I'm normally meaning is some sort of breach. Sometimes they don't really want to explain or disclose all of the problems that they've had. So sometimes they come along with a metric which says, we never want to be in that place again, and that's all you've got. And then as you dive in, you might uncover, well, how did you get to that point? Other times they come with some quite good non-functional requirements. We know we need to scale. We have this sort of use case, and I'm thinking back to my airline experience, but also we have some quite high volume customers, and sometimes quite peaky volumes where at a certain time of the day or the week, they know they're going to get a certain predicted load, whether it's running, sort of dairy auctions or whether it's running other sort of online retail sales, which can be quite sales driven. So you're going to get a certain burst of login activity. That's sort of the first touch point normally. And so sometimes customers will go, our customer experience is broken down, not when it's quiet. The system works fine. It's a great experience, but we can't scale it. We can't get thousands of users through in the first 5 minutes of a sale. And that's where they lose their customers, because if there's an alternative, they'll go off and find another company that can deliver the product. So sometimes they've come along with we need it to be able to meet these performance metrics. We want it secure. We want all the touch points available. We want it to be web and mobile. We want the MFA to be seamless, to be frictionless. If we can avoid it, let's avoid it, but still maintain the security. And then afterwards, we want to know which customers came in through which touch points and all of the good things that come out of the customer identity solution. So sometimes they'll come along with some really good parameters. And all those examples I just mentioned, we don't get that many times. So often what we do is we come in and we'll help uncover using our experience to come and say, have you thought about this? What does a login time need to be? Is it a few seconds? Is that okay? Or are you looking for something even shorter than that? How long do you want to allow that timeout? What if someone's trying to purchase something that's in demand, like a ticket? So I guess where we get involved is, we will uncover those requirements, whether they're functional, non-functional, help them with that customer experience, and then also use the technical expertise of the software engineering team, and as well as sort of leverage the expertise that the Okta bring to be able to go, this is the right solution for you, and we can prove that. And I know performance testing is something that I have some experience in, and I know that Okta has a great way of leveraging their product and giving you the ability to test and prove that you can scale or prove that you have that level of capability there when you need it. Yeah. So yeah, it's the partnership works really well because there's a lot of that experience of the product and use cases that we might not see very often, and then often we'll get use cases where we'll go, I wonder if Okta's a good fit here, and then we'll have that conversation and we'll explore whether it's the right solution through a proof of concept or a pilot or something where we can actually go, okay, we've got some confidence that if we write the full business case here, we know this is going to stack up and we can put some certainty around it.
Yeah, I've experienced a very similar thing. Obviously, grew up in New Zealand, been living in Australia for a while. That's where a lot of my career has been. So I've always had a pretty limited view of identity across the globe. Obviously, I'll go to things like conferences over my career and things like that, but my job has primarily been focused in ANZ. And I think what Okta's really allowed me to do is actually get a global view on implementations and use cases globally, which I can actually bring back and provide yourselves and provide other organisations in New Zealand, because it's that classic case of you don't know what you don't know.
Absolutely, and ClearPoint, while we'd love to be, a global consultancy that plays in all parts of the globe, that's in our long-term roadmap, but we have a good footprint in New Zealand. We've got some great relationships in Australia and a few more offshore, but leveraging that international experience. Is there anything from recent clients or recent trends you've seen overseas that you feel would be sort of the next thing that New Zealand customers need to look at? I know that's probably a hard question.
I think there's a couple that have both been starting to be driven locally, have already been implemented. But what we're really starting to see is more and more digital identity. Actual identities provided by government agencies or very trusted as services to give you a stronger reference point for when you're either interacting with a new service, etc. So in Australia, for instance, we have digital driver's licenses. In Singapore, they have SingPass, which is sort of backed by the government, and it provides you a very strong mechanism to identify who a person is. And I think we'll just find that more and more. I have spoken to different transportation airlines, etc., and they're really starting to make steps into fully paperless travel, right? So no longer needing a physical passport in some locations and actually making that whole experience digital. That is all customer identity on the surface.
Absolutely.
And if you really start thinking about all the ways you interact with technology and online, underpinning all of that is really identifying who you are. And so I think that whole verified identity piece, digital identities, and having that owned by an individual as opposed to corporations providing like a social login that can easily be created anew. I think we're seeing more and more of that, and that's really where the sort of industry is moving to help, I guess, uplift the security and authenticity of identity globally, right? It will take a lot more work to have like truly global identities being released, but at least we're seeing in different geographies and in different areas of the globe really strong engagement there to make sure that digital identities are more secure and more authentic, which I think is great.
And I'm assuming Okta's got some big implementations of those sort of leading edge.
We do. We have a few around the world. In fact, there are some also New Zealand companies that specialise in verifiable credentials and things like that as well. But we're definitely trying to help sort of pave the path to make it a more accessible option for organisations to use existing digital identities to prove out who their users are. I see it being used much, much more regularly in financial services, hopefully moving forward. And then also seeing more, I guess, ownership given to individuals to select who and what they share about their identity, as opposed to having my passport and driver's license photocopied and left at every organisation, right?
True.
I don't need that to happen. So giving power back to individuals to hold their identities as their own.
Certainly there's a lot of, we don't see it too much yet, but I know from experience of working with things like GDPR requirements, digital privacy requirements that are now probably rolling into Australia, and New Zealand tends to follow suit, that, customers' rights to control their information, their identity, that they've given the organisation they're interacting with, or the ability to be forgotten if they decide, actually, I don't want any of my details with you anymore. Can you give it all back to me? Those are use cases that Okta has. Are they difficult things to implement? Are they out of the box sort of functionality?
A lot of it can be out of the box. The identity piece especially. I actually don't find that being the hard point a lot of the time. The hardest part is actually the data.
Right, okay.
I mean, organisations store so much data about individuals. Excel spreadsheets.
Yes, familiar with a lot
documents,
of those.
Embedded into emails. These are all data pieces and data points that if they contain individuals' information, they should also be part of those structures, right? So having access to understand where those pieces of information are, the tagging of who owns them is actually quite simple once you have a solid identity. But, I mean, coming back to sort of your points earlier, if you don't have a holistic identity engine involved, how are you going to find the right?
Much harder.
Exactly. There's no way of finding that source of truth. And so I think, to your point earlier, we kind of get a tap on the shoulder when there is a driving case, right? Like there's been an event that's happened. I have a new compliance regulation that I need to uphold. I've had a data breach. I've had X, Y, and Z. I think organizations can be much more forward thinking, but I mean, I've been in those positions as well. So I understand that you're generally fighting the fire that's in front of you.
Yes, true.
But there are definitely sort of platforms and organizations that can help you get a much longer view than what you currently know. Similarly, if you don't know what's happening out there, there's no way that you can protect against it, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And so do you find on that topic of sort of customers coming to you, when they have identified that there is something going on, like what are the steps that you would usually take when they've sort of initialized that conversation?
Yeah, I guess it depends a bit on whether they're a customer that we have a relationship with or whether they're coming to us. And again, they might be coming to us, they might be putting out an RFP and you kind of go, oh, that's an interesting timing to be putting that out. So if you can normally understand the motivation behind it, that really helps. Sometimes it's, we know that we're at the end of the life of what we currently have, or sometimes it's it's a real risk mitigation scenario that's been driven, say, from the board to go, okay, we never want to be in the situation again. How do we put money in place, put some investment in place, put a program that might take us a few years to get to a better place? So really the best way is to try and understand what's the client's motivation, why they're coming, why they're reaching out to us now, or why have they put out this request for information or request for a response, and really understanding the business drivers behind that. And that really helps to tailor the solution or tailor the advice that we give them. So sometimes they come to us for consultancy, they want a report, they want an independent viewpoint on where they're currently at and where they need to get to. And that will often, we'll often put forward options with them and a roadmap. Sometimes that will then evolve into, what are the costs looks like? Okay, can you help us build a business case? And then, ideally that moves from that point to, okay, let's prove that works. Let's do a pilot or a proof of concept, and we can show them either how much more robust a solution like Okta could be, or how more scalable it could be, or how it could help them shift their security posture in a positive direction. And then based on that, you might get a full implementation that and a great partnership that runs for many, many years. And it really comes back to that, being able to partner up with the client and understand their needs, and understand their world, understand their pain sometimes, or understand the opportunity that they have or the opportunity that they feel they're missing out on. Because sometimes it's a FOMO. They have all their competitors are racing ahead and they've got better, slicker solutions, and they've got some clunky login experience that's really inconsistent, and they really just want to turn on MFA, but they don't know how. So sometimes it's not so much they have a problem they've experienced, it's that they can't move forward fast enough. And it's great when they come to us with, we want to be there in 3 years' time, help us get there robustly. Whereas what's harder is when they come and say, 3 months ago we had this really bad issue and we're still recovering from it, and come and help us pick up the pieces and then build something forward. We can help them with both of those scenarios. We have a lot of experience on both ends of the spectrum. And, we leverage our partners quite heavily in that situation, and obviously Okta key one of those. So
I actually really like that about the partnership between ClearPoint and Okta. Obviously, Okta being a large global organisation, New Zealand and even Australia actually can just seem like a small blip in a much larger piece. But having ClearPoint provide a longer-term view of what customers need and where they're going helps myself, my peers, actually start presenting these ideas back to product, right? Yeah. And so having that partnership and relationship where the conversation is free-flowing, we get insights from the market that we can pass back to make our products better for everyone else, and vice versa. We can also pass back insights that are going on in the organisation or insights that we're seeing to help you inform your customers as well. Yeah,
no, great. And it works both ways. As you said, we can, we'll often see opportunities where Okta might not have had had an opportunity to pitch for the work whenever it came up 5-10 years ago, or whether it was all zero in its old days. There's a lot of companies around that have maybe started out with the all zero product, or they've started out with a self-service or a free tier of Okta, and then gone, okay, now we don't know what to do. We've outgrown this, but we don't know where to go next. And that's where, obviously we bring in our combined experience to come up with a great solution.
So if I was a customer and I know that I need to do something new, or maybe I've started implementing, when do you think the best time for me to approach ClearPoint would be along that journey?
Yeah, I guess they could approach ClearPoint or Okta if they've already sort of made a decision, or they've already have some knowledge of the product. But the obvious answer is as early as possible. I'm not saying sort of phone the 24/7 number, but as early as possible, as early as you think you have a need, we can help explore that, in a pre-sales type mode, and just explore that need, understand, sort of pull a few threads and see what's behind that initial curiosity. I'm assuming likewise you have lots of different leads that come into Okta in various different ways, and I guess it's that collaboration between us. My advice to customers would be, if you feel there's some risk there, or there's some opportunity that you're not exploiting, and you feel that a more cohesive, seamless customer identity solution is going to enable that, then come and talk to us. And we'll bring in you guys as the wider conversation, and we'll explore what's possible. And I'm pretty confident that with the combined experience of the two companies, we can put something together for a customer, a winning solution for them. Well, it's been awesome talking to you, April.
You too.
And I've really enjoyed this, and I think we'll wrap it up there. Look forward to talking again at some point, and look forward to the next ClearPoint Unlock podcast.